Hello everyone, welcome to the Pigments 3 live stream. Thanks for joining us. Today we wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about the history of Pigments and introduce you to some of the new features from Pigments 3. We have several team members that worked on Pigments, and we're going to also take questions and answers at the end. Also to mention, this Pigments 3 is a free update, so if you own Pigments, you can go and download the update and enjoy the new version already. To start, I'm going to welcome Samuel, who is our head of DSP, and he's also been the project manager for each of the versions of Pigments. So Sam, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the history, what was the original intention around Pigments when we released the first version.
Sure. Well, hello everyone. Yeah, I think we've started working on Pigments around, we released actually Pigments 1 in 2018. At this moment, I think it's been pretty much 20 years since we've started working on emulations of hardware synthesizers, and since we gathered a lot of knowledge and expertise on this kind of components of audio modules we want to bring to our users, we thought it was the right time to provide our users with our take on what could be a modern, heavy, fully loaded synthesizer as a software plugin. And yeah, I think we had some pretty big competitors in this market, and if we wanted to actually exist in this market, to have a right place in it, we had to find the right angle to be recognized. And so we chose the angle of we wanted Pigments to be a synthesizer easy to understand, easy to play with, not heavy to program. And so we focused a lot on the ergonomics, on the GUI, the graphical interface design. And this way we present all the modulations at the center of the interface to allow the user, by just looking at the screen, to understand what is going on, how a patch is constructed, what is modulating what. And I think this, plus the other great idea we had in the team, was to add the sound design tips, these kind of tiny things that allow for the user, for each sample of the factory bank, for each preset, of the factory bank, the sound designer spent some time explaining what was the intent behind the presets and what type of controls you can play with to have this patch sound a bit different but still working. And all these kinds of tiny things make, I think, the synthesizer easy to understand and to play with. So that was like the first intent of Pigments 1. And then we analyzed the feedback we were having with this first version, and it was a great success actually. And so we knew we had a strong basis to keep building on. And so we decided to release pretty quickly a second version of Pigments with new audio modules. So for instance, we've released a new oscillator, a new generator that is a sample engine and that embeds granular capabilities. We added a new filter, for instance, it's a low-pass gate from the Buchla, and we added effects and a lot of small things, but actually, a lot of them, to keep refining the product based on all the feedback we were getting from our user base. This was a really interesting work to just read what people actually want. It was really fast actually to work in this kind of process.
Yeah, we've been trying to incorporate feedback into each version that we get from the users to improve the experience. In Pigments 3, we added some new content to beef up what was already there. So there's 89 new wavetables, several new samples, and then we added some new engines and other features we'll talk about more in depth as well. I think we have a sound of some wavetables that we wanted to show as some of the new content. And Victor, who is our lead sound designer and has been an integral part of Pigments development from version 1 is going to play some sounds from new
Yeah.
wavetable sounds.
I just don't know if we have the sound. I think we don't have the image, but we have the sound. We have the sound, so yeah. So yeah, hi everyone. So as Jeff mentioned, so we in part of the update was adding new wavetables for Pigments. So we have like a list of about 80 new wavetables now. I think it's 84 or something like that. And we're trying to cover like a pretty large ground. Like we have simple stuff that is more aggressive, FM based, and like one of my personal favorites are the new plug wavetables that I've made using different synthesis techniques like Carplus-Strong or additive or just messing around with delays and filter cutters. And these are like sounds that you can sweep through, and then they will sound like actual plugged sound. So for example, if I add just an envelope that modulates this, and we have a couple of them that sound like this. Like, yeah, and this I think opens for like a new brand of sounds that the wavetables we had before like could not entirely cover. Another thing we added is a bunch of one-shot samples as well. You can find them in the Pigments 3 folder in the browser. And here you have like about 100 of sounds that we added. These are more of the simple synth sounds that you would expect. And for me, like, they're really nice bases to create new sounds, and you can use them as layers or with the granular engine. And there are like it's the same thing as the wavetable. I think they cover ground that the samples from Pigments 2 we had did not cover. So I really suggest you go digging into these samples and like let us know of the cool sounds you create with them.
We have a little issue with the screen problem, so bear with us as we try to fix this. One of our technicians is working on it. So maybe I'll give a little sales pitch since we're waiting. So currently there's a sales special going on. So if you don't own Pigments, you can buy it at a really attractive price of 99 euros, or if you own any Arturia products, you get an even better deal. And at this time, we're also giving away a special set of 5 banks, which each have 100 sounds, so 500 sounds total. Yeah, check out the offers online if you're interested, and we're working to fix this technical problem. Can they see anything? Or?
Yeah. Just
I think we are nearly there. The
So
pleasures of
I guess our HDMI cable from the computer is having a challenge, so we're replacing the cable.
I'm just gonna switch back to you. Or not.
If anyone has a good cable to recommend, write it in the comments.
And also feel free to post questions in the chat, because we have people that will be writing down your questions, and then we'll take them at the end of the demonstration.
That look good.
Yeah, looks good on our side, at least.
See? No. Issues?
Try a different USB port maybe. But it's
Don't think so. Okay, maybe let's continue and see what the
Yep.
issue again.
So one of the outstanding new features for Pigments 3 is the harmonic engine. And to speak a little bit about the harmonic engine, we have Rasmus from the DSP team who worked on the harmonic engine, and it's kind of his child.
Yeah, so my name is Rasmus, and yeah, lately I've been working on the Pigments, specifically this additive engine. Compared to other synthesis methods, one of the things with additive synthesis is that you have a really direct control over the sound. You can go in, and because the sound is built up of partials or individual signs, you can go in and directly control the different signs that your waveform is made up of. So I think for any additive synth, one of the main challenges is how you can really utilize this possibility of direct controls, but still give the user a creative workflow. So I think when we designed this, we really had this in mind, that we wanted to really have this like an unrestricted workflow where you can have creative controls but still you have control over very complex sounds, and a workflow that really allows the user to encourages the user to explore all the different sounds that you can make with this engine. I think for me personally, one of the most exciting parts of the project has actually been after I finished the development, when I got to listen to all of the presets that our sound designers have made for Pigments 3. Because then I really got to dissect the presets and go down, and you can roll back the different modulation sources and see how sound designers like Victor can make some really creative sounds with this engine. In the beginning of the stream, Victor played a little bit one of his presets that are part of the Pigments 3 bank. So maybe you could show us how we made this preset.
Yeah, so maybe I will start playing a little bit of it, even if I'm not sure that we can see the screen, but hopefully you can hear the audio. This preset is called Cyber Tempera Pad. I made it towards the end of development, once we really had finished the engine, and I was exploring how I could really do like a sound that was distinctive on the engine, because as you can listen, it's not something that you would be able to do with a typical analog sound. It almost sounds like there is a flanger or phaser, but there is none of it. Like everything in this preset is made basically using the spectrum function, which is like, maybe if you can imagine an equalizer, but then you would apply this equalizer right on the waveform itself and the level of the harmonics. And then you can choose different shapes to apply to these harmonics. And this gives you, like, every shape gives you a very distinct sound. So maybe we can go through some of them. If now I'm playing a note, there is modulation on this preset, but maybe I can bypass it the time I show you this. So this depth control is really the control about the amount of how much of this EQ or spectrum you will apply to the sound. So if I set it to 0, I'm left with a more simpler sound, and then I set the depth to 100 and it applies the EQ. Then I have this section knob, which acts kind of like it would be like your cutoff of your filter. Like this is the knob you want to grab, and then you want to grab it and tweak it like you would do on a cutoff knob. This is a very good candidate for any modulation, also like you put an envelope or an L4 like that. And then you have the shape selector, and this gives you all kind of different timbres. So if I take another one, this one is like more reminiscent to a phaser. So you can get all of those really like hypnotic and very typical timbres that I think we really weren't able to like hear in any Arturia product actually. So like it was a breeze to use this kind of engine because it's not every day that you get a new set of control that you don't know as a sound designer. And I love like, you know, just coming to a synth and say, okay, this knob, I don't know what it does. This knob, I don't understand. And I just dive in and try to have as much explanation from people like Rasmus.
Yeah, I think when we were making this specific part of the engine and refining it over time, you and me and the rest of the sound designers here today, we spent a lot of time on discussing like the different kinds of modulation we wanted to be able to do, because this is really what this spectrum section lends itself easily to, because we can, with this very direct control, we can make some quite complex sounds, but easily move around between different sounds. And with the morph feature, we can morph between the different shapes that we've created, directly defining the amplitudes. Simon, one of our other sound designers as well, he was very excited about getting this the extra range that we have on the depth knob as well, where we push all of the partials into this binary state. So it allows you to make these more harsh sounds when the partials are moving around.
Maybe you can show it in direct. So like this is from 0 to 1. Like I was saying, this will apply progressively the shape that we can see here. Like looks like little bit of little mountains. Then if you go further, the 100%, it will like push down everything that is a little bit up, and then push up everything that is up, and push down everything that is softer. So you get these really exaggerated shapes that when you apply it to the sound, it gives an even more like extreme kind of sound.
And maybe as we see, we have two different parts of the spectrum, the lower and the upper part in the display. This is defining the left and the right channel. As you can see now, some of them are split to one side and the rest to the other. Maybe you could show us in the stereo section how this...
Yeah, so this uses the stereo imaging effect that is called split. What it does is it takes the odd harmonic and it takes it to the left, and then it takes the even harmonics and takes it to the right. For those not familiar with the concept of odds and even, it's about like multiplications, I think. It's like first harmonic is odd.
I mean, it's the first.
Yeah, and then and then like every odd is you jump from 1 to 3 to 5, and then the even harmonic are the ones that are just between this. So like the second harmonic and the fourth harmonic and 6 and so on. And you just split part of the oscillator on the left, part of the oscillator on the right, and it really like gives a very wide sound. Now I just put it back centered, like those with stereo will hear. We have two other modes of widening the spectrum, which are random. I think it just takes all the amplitudes of the partials and it wiggles them.
Yeah, so you have a rate knob and a depth knob, and so the rate is how quickly the partials move to a new random position, and the depth is how far out in the stereo image this position can be. It's a random position, of course. So
yeah,
the total range.
Like as before, it's really like something you can see on the visualizer. Like the visualizer is actually a very big part of the oscillator because you really can see in direct exactly what you are doing, and I think it also plays a big part in just as a sound designer, just understanding and just making sure that you are doing the right decision. There is the periodic mode. That is the prettiest to watch, I think. Maybe you can explain how it works a little bit.
Yeah, so here with the periodic, we've removed the rate and just have this static rate to have this slowly evolving sound. But and you have a diff as the random stereo function method we saw before. But here the periodic parameter is then how many periods we have over the whole spectrum for pushing the partials to the left and right. So if you have it all the way down, they're going to move from left channel to right channel back and forth, and all the way up, you're going to end up where every odd and every even moves back and forth in tandem. And so everything in between, which allows us to give these kind of phaser sounds actually when you move through phaser sounds, if you modulate.
Yeah, it's something that you can just play around just for the visuals also, just as a visual treat.
And it really opens up the space greatly, this effect, I think.
That's true. Part that we didn't mention, like, is if we maybe we can continue going through like a couple of the key parameters of the engine. So this parity knob is the one controlling the balance between the odd and even harmonics that I was talking earlier. In a very like concrete way, if you know about saw waves and square waves, you can use this to like have either a square wave on one side or a saw wave on, at the octave above on one. So if I play, this sounds like a saw wave because it has all the harmonics. If I push it to the left, it's very close to what we know as a square wave. And then I push it to the right, I get another thing that is close to a saw wave, but the octave above, because I think it's taking the one from the second harmony.
It's like a saw with a sub, actually, an octave over here.
Another one is, I will put a little bit of spectrum back again because it sounds better. Another one is the ratio. This is also like very mathematical approach to the sound, and basically if it's at 1, it will mean that the first harmonic will be at a given frequency, and then the second will be at the double, then the third one will be multiplied by 3.
The classic way of how you would see like the harmonics of a saw, yeah.
Yeah, and you can use that to like mess up with this number, and for example say that the second harmonic should be way higher in pitch or way lower. So if we dive back and listen to only a few harmonics like that, I think we have only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 5 or 6 harmonics, and so it's easier to understand. If I use this knob and then I stretch it to the right, you will see that we go farther in the spectrum, and if you use like whole values, we added a little magnet to the knob so that it's easy for the user to reach points where it's tuned.
Yeah, so it retains a harmonic relationship in all the intervals.
Yeah. And for example, at max position, you get something that is something closer to bell sound or.
Yeah, so maybe we can move over to the effects section. I can explain some of them a little bit. So just to make it easy, I'm gonna start from a new preset. So the first effect we have here is just called window. This was the first effect that we designed for the harmonic engine actually, because in addition to having these general controls that we showed so far, we wanted to have something that gives a bit more back of this more surgical approach, which working on very specific sections of our spectrum. So here we we are able to define a window. Just going to take tilt down to spare you. So you have two parameters that can define a window, and this window is then where we apply this effect that we control in here. So the window effect is very simple and just has two other controls. It's a gain. You can push up the amplitudes inside this window. A normal distribution to have something natural. Push it all the way up to square shape. And we can use, it's kind of like a cube of a filter, you can see it as. And it's a bipolar knob, so you can also use it to filter out certain sections. Make this notch filter instead. The second control we have is just an FM, where we can, it's a bit easier to see if I turn it on, where we can apply FM only to a certain window instead of to the whole spectrum with this control here. And again, it allows us, by having a bipolar, it allows us to also remove FM. As an example, if we want to put FM, one of the side effects of frequency modulation is that when we modulate our signal, like our fundamental, it goes down in amplitude. So maybe we want to retain some of this space, so we can move back to the first partial, and then remove the FM that I apply with this parameter, only from the first, and then retain our amplitude for the fundamental. One small example of how we can use this effect. Yeah, so another example of this effect is used in the fifth neuron preset here, which is part of the Pigments 3 bank, I think. I am on input. Yes. With this bass sound, and here you can really see he's pushing up a few of the partials with the window function. You can control it further here. And here, with this preset, it shows us really well how this spectrum analyzer we have implemented can help the user as well with understanding what's going on in the signal, to stick with the usability and this visual aspect of Pigments. So here we can see, if I play a note, you can see how if I roll down the FM, you can see it in our spectrum analyzer, that it emits out from this little window, compared to again to the full FM range. So it really helps the user. Again, here it's for the full spectrum, so also for the window, and I can roll it back and move it up here. So yeah, it helps the user a lot with understanding what's going on. Another effect we have is the cluster effect, it's called. Let me just set this to like this, maybe, to make it easier to see. So the cluster effect, what it does is pushing partials together on top of each other in one cluster. I have a window again, just slightly different. It controls the position and the number of clusters we have over the entire spectrum. And then these two controls where we have the number of partials inside each of the clusters, and then the density of this cluster. So if I set this a little bit up to, let's say, 6 or something, and then with the density I can push them together in these clusters, you can see, as you see here. So yeah, in this setting, it can kind of be seen as like a window with a unison effect, because we have these movements because of the frequencies of the stack signs being slightly off from each other. So you have the destructive and constructive interference of the signs moving close to each other. To give some examples of what this can sound like, we can have, maybe you want to play some things here with, there's the inside the wormhole, it's from the Malachite bank, one of the new sound banks that are available, which is this very bright pad sound. So here the sound designer has used the cluster effect to to stack up the partials for the first fundamental, making this unison effect, and then yeah, giving it a wider sound. Another example of a pad is this Cave of Swallows. It's in the Pigments 3 bank. That's really nice. I like the chirping birds. One example of the sounds you can get with the cluster effects are these very lush pad sounds by giving this unison effect. You can also use it for something more vintage sounding. Here our sound designer has made this vintage synth organ sound. I think it's really great with some movements and a lot of here you can see that it's in the higher part of the spectrum that he's using as a unison effect. So I move it out. And finally, you can make some creative, more chaotic sounds with it. An example is this cluster WTF preset here. It goes pretty much all over the place.
Yeah, this one is crazy with the visualizer as well.
Yeah, so the last effect we have, I don't know why I can't make a new one. There you go. Let's see. So the last effect, when I learned that we were going to make this additive engine, one of the things I really wanted to make was this shepherd effect. Gets its name for the shepherd tone, auditory illusion of continuously moving or growing signs. So again, we have this window. In the same way as the window effect, where we are defining where this effect is applied, and what it does is that it moves each of the partials to the position and the amplitude of the neighboring partial, so we can move from one to the next, and a new partial is faded in at the bottom and faded out at the top. So if we cover the whole range, and we can see, wait, let me just set this something like this.
So he's preparing a ramp waveform as a modulator, so that it gives a clean, like, rising modulation signal that then he will apply to the phi parameter, which is the one that makes the pitch go up as the amplitude goes down in the lows and in the highs as well.
Which gives us this shepherd tone effect. Yeah, and this can again be used for a lot of creative effects. Our sound designer has shown here this sound effect that Jean-Michel has made. He used it slightly different originally, the phi parameter, to make just this inharmonicity by moving some of the partials off to the side, as you can see, creating this very interesting sound effect. I think it's already really nice. Now I'm gonna try to destroy it a little bit, just to show. I'll try to modulate the parameter the same way as before, show how it can be used to, again, just define a ramp. let me apply it here. Then we'll have this same effect now with more movement in it. Yeah, some other presets that have been made with the shepherd effect. One is this follow the shepherd build plugin, build preset with this kind of gloomy feel. Maybe if you want to play.
Yeah, we can just play it maybe as a conclusion to the harmonic engine.
See, he's using it to make this droopy feeling. It's funny. Yeah. Maybe we need to move on to.
Yeah, thanks, Rasmus. Thanks for covering the harmonic engine for us.
Yeah.
Next up, we have the utility engine. So the idea with the utility engine was to provide a third engine which could augment the sound of the existing engine. So the utility engine is comprised of 3 elements. The first is a new oscillator. And the oscillator could be used as a sub-oscillator, or it can be used to augment the content that's in the other engines. I think Victor has an example of how you could use the new oscillator.
On these presets, I didn't use the sub-oscillator, but I used the traditional noise generator that this engine uses. Maybe I can just explain them from my sound designer point of view, and you can give details about the idea between these. So, like as a sound designer or musician, what it gives you is like 2 additional sample players with a curated collection of samples that we have made especially for this engine in mind. So you can see these are most of them are really long and looped samples, and we made like what we call seamless loop, is when you loop the sample, then you can't really hear when it's starting back, because like you fade in the end with the beginning. So we gave like a pretty large collection of these sounds, and we also gave access to a one-shot mode, so you can use it as like a layer of transients you can hear at the beginning of the sound. So like on this preset, for example, I just added, I think, a one shot. So if I disable the utility engine, what you get is this preset, like a sub bass with a little bit of high end using the harmony. I just added a Celesta one shot that plays at the beginning of each note. And there is also another layer of noise with a sample called Burning Vinyl that adds like this very characteristic grit. And we have also 2 controls that allow you to shape the sound even further, so you can tune the sample and then also filter it either with a high pass or low pass. And
yeah, so these all of the elements of the utility engine were basically made to strengthen or augment the sound of the Pigments preset. So the noises could be used as transients to make a sound more percussive, or they could be used as kind of some texture, adding texture to a sound. There's a lot of nice possibilities by using these within your sounds. I think from there, the next new feature we wanted to introduce was a new filter in the filter section. So in December, we released a new version of vCollection, vCollection 8, and we updated one of the classics, the Jup 8V, which is a model of the Roland Jupiter 8 analog synthesizer, and we thought that the filter from the Jupiter 8 would make a nice addition to the Pigments filter set because it has a really beautiful way that the resonance works, and it creates some nice flavor. I think you were going to show with the...
Yeah, what I just created while he was talking, a simple analog sound on which I applied this new filter we just talked about. I just added an envelope, so right now it sounds like this. So it's the...
Yeah, you can hear in the high end, it's really nice sound. So yeah, this is augmenting. There's already a lot of great filters in the filters section. Some of them are recreations of filters from analog synths, and some are new creations. But this just adds one more flavor to the filter section. Another thing we did in this new version was to allow the user to separate the filter streams, so allowing filter 1 to go just to effects bus A or B, and the other filter to go to the other effects bus, to be able to allow some more creative possibilities in sound design.
Yeah, so this is a feature that, as a sound designer, is like really nice to get, because you really get another layer of control between your two sounds. For example, here I just set up a simple piano sound that is playing on top of the analog sound we just heard. Increase the octave. So you can hear it's not going through the filter. And what I said is that I put the filter routing mode to FX split, which is the new mode. Then when you head to the effect page, we see, so the analog sound is going through this bus of effects, but they are actually bypassed. Then I get the FXB bus, on which I can, so this is my piano sample, and then I can add specific effects just to this part. For example, I add a new pitch shift delay, which is one of your new effects, then reverb after, and then when I play from there, you will hear that the analog sound will still stay dry with no effects, while the piano will be like drowned in a huge reverb and padded delays. So like this is really opening huge doors for sound design, because like I usually do that through my DAW. I like go to complicate configuration, but now I can do it all in Pigments, which is a breeze. Sam joined us. It's like maybe a good time to talk about the new effects.
Yeah, shortly. So I can just say that we decided to add, of course, new effects to our buses and to our slots. And so you already talked about the pitch shift delay. We also worked on multi-band compressor. I think this is one of the features that has been asked maybe the more by our user community. This is a multi-band compressor, so you can split your signal into 3 different bands, and for each one of them you can either compress or expand the signal, and it allows you, I mean, it can be used in a lot of creative ways. Maybe the most common would be to just be able to allowing a preset to cut easily through the mix. Maybe Victor, you can talk about more other uses that you can find for this kind of effect.
Yeah, so I won't go into too much details, but this is something that you have individual control over the bands. So those familiar with like multi-band dynamics from Live or other plugins you can find in other synths, be familiar with this one. It can allow you, for example, like to compress only the high end of the spectrum, or then to make sure that your high end of the sound will like be pushed out, even if they are not really present. We added a few presets that can make you get started, because it's an intimidating. It can be intimidating at first glance, and like I'm sure like you will have like lots of fun just pushing your presets to the maximum. There is another couple of effects that we haven't talked about.
Yeah, so we decided, based on the work we've done for the FX collection, we wanted to add two new effects to add an analog flavor. These effects being the Juno chorus and the bell flanger that we worked on this last year. So as you know, or might not know, we already have this kind of classic digital effects in our collection, but we wanted to give some more character to be able to find this kind of sounds easily. Maybe you can quickly show how it sounds.
Yeah, so what I did was I just added both of them on the analog sound we created just earlier, and now it will sound like this. So it's instant 80s goodness, like you can just put that to embellish your patch and it will just sound really great, I think. I think we're reaching the end of the time we had, 5 minutes.
Maybe we can say that even for the effects, for instance, we keep working on improving the existing modules and the existing audio features we're having. A quick example I have in mind for the parametric EQ or the stereo pan effects have been worked on and improved along the way. And this kind of research, we're doing it perpetually, continuously. There are a lot of different tiny features everywhere that we keep working on to improve the workflow, the ergonomics, and the usability of the plugin.
Yeah, maybe we can show a couple other presets before we go to the questions and answers. I don't know, maybe there's something from the Spectrum Bank or one of the favorites that you had from working on Pigments, Victor.
I think there is one that you selected, Rasmus. Was called Hourglass. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
This is another of the presets with the Shepard effect. Maybe if you play it. He's using the sample engine together with the harmonic engine. So this percussive sound is from the sample engine, and he then uses the Shepard to add this.
Sounds like a wave or like it's rinsing the sound.
Yeah, it creates this unending movement to the sound, which I think the Shepard effect can be really good too. I think another good preset is actually one of yours for some of the more classic additive synthesis sounds that people might be familiar with. Victor made a really nice organ sound. It's called my French keyboard. Wait.
New York house.
It's also maybe a good time to send some shout outs. Florian on the product team helped kind of redesign some of the graphical user interface, so I think Pigments 3 looks a little cleaner now. Also, Gustavo Bravetti rewrote all of the in-app tutorials, so it's almost like rewriting the manual. There's a lot of great tutorials built into Pigments now, so if you want to learn some of these new features, I would definitely recommend checking out the in-app tutorials, which are available in the side panel.
Yeah. If you want to play it.
Yeah, the preset, like I'm not an organ player, so I just like.
You can really change. We have this rubber sound.
Yeah, this was done like purely using the harmonic engine. Was like trying to figure out the good settings to get like an organ sound without being too academic, but you can just mess around and find nice tones if you use fewer partials.
Yeah, so
Is it time to go to the questions?
Yeah. Sure.
So I can read them along ago and then answer, maybe. So question we have often is, can we create custom wavetables in Pigments? The answer is no. We have like a format that you can use that is pretty standard, I would say. We have not, at least not yet, and like we don't have tools to create wavetables in Pigments. There are a lot of tools out there that are really fun if you try to look them out. No, there is no.
Yeah, you can't create wavetables within Pigments, but you can import wavetables that you maybe created in another application. So not all wavetable synths allow you to import your own wavetables.
Yeah, totally. Like if the wave files has 2048 samples per
Cycle.
per frame, yeah, then it will Pigments will read it, and you can even drop the file right in the engine. Question 2 is, do you plan a hardware version of Pigments? I'm from the sound design team, so maybe I will let some of my colleagues answer.
No comment.
No comment. I would sure like to have, but I mean, yeah. We have question 3 is, how does the new engine affect processing load? It's a good question. I think it's like when we released Pigments 2 and the granular engine, this is an engine that we chose not to cripple down and not to limit. So basically it really depends on how you set it. There are very useful tips that if, for example, you think it's using too much CPU, you can use this partial limit. And then you can also just make sure you're not playing too many notes at a time. So I'd say it can be hungry on some patches, but we made sure that to strip them down and make it as light as possible. But then it's also, I think it's a decision about thinking about maybe the next generations of synthesizer and making room for, I mean, like seeing how CPU react and evolve. Like in 2 years, you will probably be able to do some things with your computer that you wouldn't be able. So yeah, it can be hungry, but you can also strip it down.
Yeah. To give some perspective, the reason why it's this type of engine is expensive is because you have to run one oscillator for each partial. That's how you do additive synthesis. So if you're using 512 partials and playing 6 voices, you have 3,000 oscillators running. So this is one of the ways that we've also tried to for sound designers to limit themselves. So if you design like big pads that you expect to have many voices of or things like this, it's one of the ways to cut down on the CPU is to use the parameter actually called limit on. If you can show, I don't know if you
No,
can
I
explain.
showed it already.
But
maybe to get back to the original question is, how does the new effect affect processing load? I think if you it doesn't affect the whole instrument if you don't use it. I mean, there is no. It doesn't mean that it exists. So Pigments 3 will be more CPU hungry. It doesn't work like that. If you don't use it, it's absolutely not used by the CPU. I think so. Maybe you can.
Yeah.
Should I keep reading the questions or
Yep.
want to go up? So question 4 is not really a question, but I would love to have skins themes for Pigment. Yeah, again, it's something that I think we've been asked a couple of times already. like I like to mess up with my computer, so I found totally unofficial ways to do that. But no, you can't. I tried and it broke some stuff. Personally, it's something that I would like to see on this kind of thing. But it's like we can comment because we just released Pigments 3. We gonna
Yeah, plus we spend so much time on, trying to find the right meaning to have to each symbol or a color or a line, or that is very hard for us to find another way that is as clear as this one to present the different things we have on an interface that is already quite crowded. So yeah, it would take a lot of time for us to find other ways.
Yeah.
To display this kind of information.
A lot of time is used on usability in the interface. So if we instead would do it for 4 different themes, it would split the time that we would go into each of these designs. So.
Next question is: would love to see a master oscilloscope to visualize my waves, just like Minilog. And you're right, because the Minilog one is very nice. We have that for the wavetable engine. I think you probably know that, and it's any tweak you made to the wavetables, it affects the visualizer, because it's really like talking to the program behind the sound and getting the info back and displaying it to a screen. This is more easy to do it if you do it in a static way, and when you start doing live oscilloscope, like it can get sometimes very noisy, and like I'm not saying like we never do something like that, but I think we already have a very nice way of visualizing sound in the harmonic, which is like showing you the spectrum, and the wavetable I think also works so well. But maybe like it's also something that I think we already discussed also. Next question: request audio input to use built-in effects engine and modulation as an audio effects for other instruments.
Yeah, I think we've had this one before as
Yeah.
well. I think probably what we would end up doing is making an effects processor like Pigments, but dedicating it to effects rather than, you could always import samples. It's obviously not live audio, but you have some ability to use Pigments as an effects processor using samples. But
you were like about halfway away. Next question is: can you show how to load a sample into Pigments? Yes, I can. So you have a couple of ways to do that. The one I would recommend and I use for myself is you make sure the sample engine is loaded, because otherwise if you use the wavetable, it will use it as a wavetable. Then you go through any file explorer of your choice. I use the one built in Ableton. You take the WAV file and you just drag it here. What it will do is that if you save the preset, it will save the location of the sample in your hard drive. But then if you want to make sure that the sample is added in your resource file, you can go in the browser here and then use the import folder button, where you can specify specific folders to be added. I personally go always for the just drag and drop, because it's easier.
it's nice, the folder, if you plan on using, you could create a folder and have samples in there specifically you want to use it with Pigments, and then you have that, it'll keep the path and everything.
Next question. Can you show how to map knobs to the macros with the standalone version? I can, yes. So from the standalone version, I don't have like MIDI knobs connected, but I can show you. So we moved every MIDI related things to the side panel from the collection 8, and we also use the same basis for the plugins. So now you will have a side panel access here with a gear icon. You press it, then you have a MIDI tab. You can make sure that in your settings, your MIDI device is enabled, the one that has the actual knobs. Then you click on a parameter on the interface, and then you are supposed to move a knob here. And then it will appear as an assignment with the channel and the respective CC. I mean, it shouldn't be harder than that. Next. So it's a suggestion. It says the new FX aux UI is an improvement, but it would be very nice to have a view sound level meters for the input and the output of FX aux. That would make mixing much easier. I think I can agree with you to some extent on this one. It's something that I think we would like to improve in the future, like giving more info to the user, and then at the same time, yeah, we have to be careful not to make it too busy. But I agree, it could be a nice addition.
Yeah, plus we already have, I mean, for the dynamics effects, for instance, the compressor, the multiband compressor, we already have some feedback on the gain reduction, this kind of information we want to provide. So yes, to find the right compromise, as Victor was saying. It's a good remark.
Okay, maybe we can switch because my
Yeah,
mouth
sure.
is getting drier.
Yeah, so this question is about the additive engine. Question is, why does the additive engine not have unison? This unison effect, it would be like it's already a quite heavy engine, as some question has been regarding, and having this unison, I think it doesn't give so much characters as some of the other things you can do in the additive engine, as we showed during our demonstration. One of the things you can use the cluster effect is to get some unison sound as well with these extra capabilities. So, and if you want to, you can use two different. You can copy your first engine to the second engine and slightly detune it or things like this to create unison effects. So I think it's mainly because we wanted to have more creative effects that really enhance the flavors of the additive engine compared to just have some of the same effects as our other engines. So are the presets you used in this live set available in Pigments? Yes. All of the presets that I have had selected for this, I think there were 3 who are not of the Pigments 3 bank that comes with Pigments, but are of this bank, the
Spectrum bank.
The Spectrum bank, yeah, that we can. I think the offer is €20 now for the 500 preset if you buy Pigments 3 now, or if you update from Pigments 2.
If you buy Pigments 3 now, you get that Spectrum bank free.
Okay.
If you already have Pigments but just want to buy the bank, I think it's $19.99 or something like that.
There you go. So yes, either they are part of this new Pigments 3 bank, or they are part of this. A few of them, most of them are part of that we use. They are part of the Pigments 3, but some of these additives, at least, were, I think 3 or 4 were part of these new banks. Is there really a big competition pressure in the VST developing world? So you get inspiration from other synths? I mean, clearly, I think in most industries, when you develop new products, you are looking at what the competitors are developing and drawing inspiration from this. So of course, I've personally tried a lot of different additive synthesizers these last periods.
But I think we take inspiration from outside of software instruments as well.
Yeah.
Hardware instruments, rack, different things. So yeah, we're definitely getting inspired by what's happening out in the market.
And competition, I think yes, there's competition, but I think it's a good competition.
Yeah, competition is always good.
Yeah, plus I think we found our place, as I was saying in the beginning. We found our angle and what we wanted to provide. So yeah, it's an interesting market, let's say.
Definitely. I think maybe that was it for the questions.
Looks like.
There's one coming.
They are coming in.
second. So I would like to have more information on the granular engine this question goes on. How many steps does the granular engine have? And you can
Yes. Yeah, so the granular engine is an addition on top of the sample engine. The principle for the ones who don't really know how it works is to just split the sample you have loaded into your engine into a lot of tiny grains. The size can vary. I mean, it could be a few milliseconds, for instance. And the aim of the granular engine is to create textures evolving soundscapes by concatenating and playing, I mean, at the same time, a lot of these different grains and you can play with several random parameters to add width. And I think the best way to get into it is just to try to play with it and to understand, because we try to have this kind of visual feedback that allows you to understand what is actually going on when you're playing. But the main idea is you decide the frequency at the one you want to trigger new grains. You decide the size of the grains. You can repitch the grains. You can synchronize this frequency on to UDO or to play like in absolute frequency. And you can play with the width of each grain, with the window that is applied to each grain to create a lot of different sounds starting from basic samples. And I hope it answers the question.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have a lot of samples that they've recorded themselves or whatnot, and the Pigments granular engine gives you a way of kind of adding a lot of flavor to your samples that you couldn't get in other places. So it's a good place to experiment with, I think.
And I think
New one is coming, I think.
okay, so M1 processors and NKS support. So on M1 processor, we currently, so officially we're not compatible because we've not finished to run our test plan on just to check that everything is going right. But actually, so yeah, the whole message is officially we're not compatible. But we have a lot of users actually who try to just update Pigments, and that's who are reporting that it works fine. We still need to finish to check that to be completely sure and to validate that. About the NKS support, we plan to do it in an upcoming update to add the NKS support for all the new presets. I don't know if you have any other information on that I was missing.
No, I mean, it's probably going to take another 6 weeks or something to have NKS support. But
Maybe explain why it takes time.
yeah, I mean, we basically, the process of adding NKS support, we actually have to send everything to Native Instruments and they have to validate it and come back to us. In the context of like developing instrument, the sound design, often we take as much time as we can to create the best library. And so we don't have necessarily this extra 4 weeks to send the sounds to Native Instruments for validation. So we've been tending to do that at the end just to provide a better quality sound library than if we took the time to do it later.
So I think we already answered. The question is, will the new NKS preset be put up? So, is there a randomized function to create new presets or preset ideas? This is an interesting idea. We've decided not to have a global randomized function, but that's still something we can discuss for the next versions. But you can find a lot of random-based things already integrated into the software. You have, for instance, I don't know if you can see the software. I think so. So you have randomness for each line of the sequencer. You have ways to generate randomly stuff for the function generators. You have 3 actual complete three types of modulators that are completely random based: the Turing, sample and hold, and the binary one. So you can play with random or procedural stuff to generate. One example would be to use I don't know, the Turing modulator on the course tune of one of your engines. And since you can set up a scale, and to be sure the tune will remain in this scale, you can generate melodies, for instance. So yeah, you can find a lot of random tools in the plugin, but you don't have a global button you can push just to generate a new preset.
I think it's something we discussed in, rather than have one global button to randomize all parameters, if we did it, I think what we'd want to do is allow the user to sort of customize how much they would want to randomize certain parameters, because they may be happy with some things, but they want to randomize other things. And that just tends to be a bigger kind of feature update, and we haven't prioritized it as of yet.
And maybe if I can add a few words about this, like this kind of feature really works with a synth with a closed path. Like when you have a specific envelope modulating a specific stuff, LFO that you know is always going to be connected like to the bus width or something like that. Like Pigments is very open. It's like a modular synthesizer, so you connect the LFO to whatever you want. And like adding randomness to that, like it can either lead to just absolutely no change or horrible results. So like if we get to a point where we want to add this, it will require us to come out with a very clever solution that assigns the modulator to like relevant parts of the sound.
Okay, the question is, can you make a quick walkthrough to the ARP section? The question is the limitation on length of arpeggio before it repeats. So I don't know, Victor, maybe if you can...
Maybe, yeah. If we can focus on the question, limitation of arpeggio before it repeats. I think what you're coming from is that, if, for example, like I just enable the arpeggiator from a default preset, if I would play like a D major chord, okay, I don't know. I think we lost the. Okay, it's not.
Yeah, it's a standalone.
We are playing on the standalone version. Let me just play a new preset on the actual VST. Then enable the arpeggiator. We just play like as many notes as I have hold, so which will be like a step. One thing we added in Pigments 2, I think, was like you can have like, for example, the octave lane. We can play like slower than the velocity lane. So you can, in a way, you can fake a longer arpeggio if, for example, like I put in a sequence that goes forward and then goes down on only 4 steps. Like it will loop very fast, but then I can use this selector to like, this is the octave divider. So like if I put it divided by 4, it will take 4 times as much time to go to the new octave step. So you can see it's running at a much slower rate compared to the rest, and like this allows you to make longer arpeggio. Like if for example, I take it to 8, it will take even more time. And you can do that for the gate length, the slide, the trig probability. So like you can actually make very long sequences just by cheating a little bit with these boxes.
Yeah, plus each line can have its own length.
Yeah.
So by combining all these kind of features, you can create really long sequences that actually don't repeat themselves.
Yeah, you can do like stuff like that when the velocity has only 5 steps and the other one has 3, and that you can do like stuff that doesn't really repeat, so like polymetric sequences. We have new question. Next question is it fully supported by Analog Lab V yet? I think we are working on it and we are really close. This will come soon, or are we
I think
already?
we're about to publish it, but it's not done yet.
Okay, yeah. So like,
it was going to be this week. Is it still this week? Do you know?
It was the plan, but I'm not 100% sure of the
I
information.
didn't hear an update.
but like we are,
It's
from what I
close.
heard, we are nearly ready. Like just running last time checks. I don't have any more questions right now. So I don't know. We can play music, but we have not rehearsed this part.
Playful.
I have one question. Will you ever have a morphy function on Pigments like on Polybrute?
Did everyone hear the question? Morgan's question was, will we ever have a morphy feature like we have on the Polybrute, but in Pigments?
Yeah, it's a tough question. One thing, to be honest, is that the Polybrute has been designed with this feature at its core. I mean, it was really important to all the different parameters are made to be continuous, so you can continuously morph from one preset to another. And this is a required condition to have this kind of feature to work properly. In Pigments, we have a lot of, as Victor was saying, we have a lot of presets with discrete controls. We have switches, but we have like
Engine types.
engine types, filter types, and even the modulators. I mean, how you morph between a preset that has two LFOs and two filters and another one who has one function generator on one engine. It raises a lot of questions, but that's still, I mean, kind of direction that we're interested. I mean, just to find new ways to explore the sounds we can produce with this kind of engine. I'm not sure it completely answers the question, but
So maybe.
No, just that we can just give a big shout out to the Polybrute team, because like this was like
It was not easy.
not easy to develop, and I think it's really working well in the end. Personally, I would say like I wouldn't see that on a synth like Pigments, but if we like one day or someone would make a VST just really based on that, it would be interesting. Like, I would really see like stuff like with big XY pads and maybe like inertia and fake physics that you could like throw a ball and go through different presets. So I wouldn't see that happen on Pigments as it is. There is a new question.
so we can get back to the music stage.
Question is, what forms of synthesis are you guys thinking of possibly implementing in the future? I don't know if we can answer that.
I think we have a lot of ideas, but
we have ideas.
Yeah, I mean, there's things we thought about for Pigments 3, like allowing the cross-modulation of multiple engines. So there's things that we're thinking about, but we're not sure what's going to be in the next version of Pigments yet.
Yeah, I think anything would be good, but personally, like stuff like physical modeling or like vocal synthesis or stuff like that could be interesting to at least investigate.
Let us know what you would like.
Let us know. Like, of course, like this is really like a feature request time, because like just to mention that we are really reading every single forum, every single comment we can find on social networks. Maybe it can look like sometimes we are a bit quiet and don't answer to everything, but we really read every thread we come across, and this is really something that is important to us. And every, I think, feature that we added was part of us that wanted it, and also like part of the customers that we wanted it. Question is, does the sample engine allow you to map to keys you've selected? Not entirely sure of the question, but I can show you. There is, if you head to the map section of the sample engine, you have two modes that are one that is key map and the other one that is key envelope map. what it does is that when you add several samples to the pool of samples, it will automatically like place them on different octaves, and we made it like pretty simple so that if you add a second sample, you can see like from C0 to C1, the first sample is playing, and then all above, this is the second sample, and if you go on and add even more samples, you can see that it split the keyboards like in octaves evenly. We didn't want to go into like per key mapping because it requires like more complex interfaces, and then we really want to make it simple for Pigments. And so for now, like you can do this split to the keys or also to the velocities. Question is, can we have more partial options available in the future, like 1024 or 2048?
I mean,
yeah, please. Maybe.
Not sure there is a point.
No, I think with the 512, if you're playing a very low note and you have a ratio of 1, it's covering the full spectrum. There can be situations where it might be interesting if you want to like really have an intense unison sound with the clustering effect. Maybe it would be interesting. But I think right now with what today's processors can handle, I think this is a good limit. Maybe in a few years when computers are faster, it's a quite easy upgrade for us to do. The only problem is going to be on the user end. So when CPUs get faster, maybe or processors get faster, maybe it would be something that we could do down the line.
Yeah, maybe we don't have plans to expand it right now, but let us know if it's something you really want and we can consider it.
Yeah. So the next question is, just want to know which tool you use to develop the UI, Qt Juice or whatever, but maybe it's a secret. I don't know. I don't know if it's a secret.
We're using Juice, so that's the...
Yeah, we have no one from the software team to properly answer this kind of question, but they have a framework based, like an in-house framework based on the Juice library. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like we upgraded it because we needed specific things. So I'm seeing more and more a very custom software to fit on it. Question 25, why you guys kicked out the useful out button sequencer? And the good news is that we didn't kick it out. So if I head back to the interface, like initially it was, like you were saying, it was in the sequencer tab. But what it did is that it only held the keyboard if you had the sequencer enabled, which is nice, but also you just sometimes want to filter out every note off from your preset and just work on your patch. So we moved it here. It's right in the play settings, just above the keyboard. And I think now if you press this button and you can just press keys on your keyboard and they will hold regardless of if you have the arpeggiator or sequencer. It's something that I love, so I understand why you were angry. Is there a way to stack two different presets and synths that they merge together?
Analog Lab?
Not.
Yeah, multi in Analog Lab.
I mean, we have the Analog Lab solution. That it is a plugin that blends every plugin that we have, and then allow you to blend patches, create multis with two parts. So you can have this like two Pigments instances and assign specific macros that talk to both instances. So you can make stuff like that. I don't think I have it installed right now because I just went through a formatting. But also you can cheat your way and like for example in a preset of the library, it's called this. So I cheated and I used one of the engine with the quantized modulator. So it's playing a melody on top, like this, and then there is a macro that makes you listen to this other part. So it's controlling the volume of this part, and then like you have just the chord sequence and then a melodic sequence on top. So it's using the sub oscillator because it also have a quantizer inside it. Question was the same. Question is, can we imagine a version without fancy visuals for a bit better CPU use? We can imagine something like that. It's something that I know we want to explore and investigate. If it is successful and if it doesn't make you lose too much information about the patch, then it's something that we could add. But like Sam was saying, like we really like make sure that people can understand the patches, and so we'll do that only if it doesn't, make you lose information about the signal flow and the synthesis.
Maybe there could be a performance mode though, where it just changed the view and you didn't have the modulation bar or something, because if people, they can still use the existing view for sound design, but then maybe they're limited in how many voices they could play. And then if we, I don't know if the GUI is going to make that big a difference, but.
I thought that the GPU was handling
Yeah, actually, I mean, maybe it will get a bit technical, so I don't know if it was spending too much time on that, but the audio computations are run in a different thread than the GUI things. So in theory, what happens in the GUI shouldn't have any impact on the audio thread that you can see. I mean, when you look at the CPU meter in Ableton, it's the audio thread consumption. But in some cases, if you overload too much the CPU, you can have side effects. That's some things we definitely want to work on and to improve. But in any case, yes, I mean, if there is no easy way to be completely sure to remove these dependencies, we could think about, as you said, like a performance mode where you have pretty much nothing displayed, just to be able to control it with an external controller. But yeah, I mean, I think we answered the question.
Next question is, can you do keyboard split across patches like on Polybrute? Not exactly. I mean, you can again cheat your way into like splitting the keyboard and like assigning the modulation of the notes you play, and then have a big gap in the beginning, in the middle, and then assign it to another engine. So you can't do that natively, but then you can cheat your way around it. And it's actually something that I really like in Pigments, is that we added a lot of tools. Like you would do that using the combinate mode called remap, and like this would be like your keyboard, and then you can draw stuff like that, for example, and this would mean like all the right part of the keyboard, I think above C3, would like send the full modulation, and then all the rest would send like a negative modulation. And you could like create a patch that uses this. I mean, we are seeing like very clever ways of using these tools from the sound designers, and I've been personally surprised with some of the uses this year, and it's nice. So I recommend like digging around with this part and the remap function if you don't know it. Are there any plans to add m-seg-style modulators, so multi-segment envelopes? And the good news is that they are there already. It's not maybe that obvious to someone that already used Pigments, but we added this in Pigments 2, I think. So there is a new mode for the functions. You can access it here. By default, it's a LFO mode. That means it cycles and it will keep on looping and doesn't really take care of the sustaining. Okay? If you switch it to envelope, what you get is an envelope with a sustain point. So anything that you add to the sustain point, meaning if you press a key, it will reach the sustain point, it will keep there, and then when you release it, it will release. You can change the sustain point by double-clicking on it. And you can also do fancy things like looping between segments with the loop function here. So for example, like I set it to loop on the 4th point, and then I set it to begin loop on the 3rd point, and like if I assign this to my pitch, you can hear it's doing the first part, and then it's looping to the little ramp I created. Pac-Man. We don't have any more questions. So yeah, 30 questions. Round number, Pigments 3.
So yeah, go buy Pigments if you don't already own it. Special
Or
deal.
if you have it.
And you get 500 sounds.
Maybe say goodbye.
Yep, thanks for joining us. Like our YouTube channel if you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you in a few weeks when we do a new live stream.
Bye bye.
Thank you, goodbye.